Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Oh So Spurs podcast. We are here after a much better result than last week. I think we can all agree. I'm joined today by Sai. How you
Hello,
doing,
mate. How
Sai?
you doing?
Doing good. How you doing, Johnny?
Absolutely. Yeah, can't wait for Newcastle. That's all I'm going to say.
That makes one of us. And
Newcastle away. Newcastle away. It's a dream.
What could
I'm
go
in good
wrong?
form, yeah.
What could go wrong?
Let's
our
bring down the
favorite
mood.
fixture. And I'm also
Yeah, I'm
here
good,
with
I'm good.
Stu. How you doing, Stu?
Yeah, I'm also really looking forward to Newcastle because, it's impossible we're going to get tonked 3 years in a row, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
no chance. No chance. We will leave the Newcastle preview to the next podcast, and we will
fair
keep
enough.
at least a veneer of celebration around this one, given that we have actually won a game. I know, after seeing Twitter on Monday, you might never have thought it was going to happen, but we did manage to beat Everton 4-0 in a fairly convincing fashion. I will go ahead and start off with Sai, because you're the one next to me. How did you think? What do you think about the game? Did you any standout performers? What do you think we did well? What do you think changed from the Leicester game?
I think we did a lot of things well, and there were many standout performers, and we'll touch on each of us. I guess we'll touch on different aspects. I thought that we came out of the blocks really well, which we did against Leicester, to be fair. And there seems to be a concerted effort from Ange and the team to sort of reverse a little bit of what we saw last season. How many times last season did we say poor first half, had a conversation at half time, came back out second half, really going for it, and we went for it right from the off yesterday. And within the first 11 minutes, we'd had 5 shots. Which, when you look at some of our stats from last season, in the first half, when we were getting maybe one or even no shots on target at times in the first half last season, that was interesting. And I'm gonna call out one of our players who maybe wasn't stand out to the viewers at home, but in the ground when you watched him and you look at the stats, Romero just had a stormer. I know he got the goal and he'll stand out for that, but his tackling was just immense on Saturday. 6 for 6. Yeah, 6 for 6, no bookings, no nothing. And he was just immense going forward and coming back. And he coulda, shoulda had 2 goals. That control, his chest control for that shot that was saved by Pickford, just immense. And the more I watch him, the more I bloody love the fella. He just, I think, epitomises the heart, the desire that we want. What we want to eliminate is that little bit of watching the penalty spot whilst Vardy slips in behind you. We need to maybe, that's a price that we pay for the performance that we got on Saturday. I thought he was absolutely immense. Everton, listen, we didn't allow Everton to play, but they're not going to be the best team that comes to the lane this season either. But so I think we, as much as Twitter blew up after the Leicester, I think Twitter might need to calm down a little bit after the Everton, because I think the reality is probably somewhere in the middle. But yeah, really good. Met up with Jonny and Jim at the game and a few of the others at the game beforehand. Had a couple of pints. It was really nice to be back. So all round, a great day, great performance, and big up Christian Romero. I love you, buddy.
Well, I was going to ask Johnny what he thought about it next, but given that he seems to have disappeared, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Stu. How you doing? How you thinking?
Before Johnny chips in, I just want to say about Romero as well. I didn't see it at the time, but I was listening to one of the other podcasts with IG, and he was saying that when Matters was doing his usual complaining to the ref, it was heard by the crowd, Romero shouting, "Matters, leave it out." So it's also good him showing a bit of leadership and saying, man, stop your whinging, just get on with the game. And I think that's exactly what we were crying out for last week after the Leicester game. When we kind of fell to pieces after their equaliser. We need more men to stand up and take control, and hopefully Romero is doing that.
And the other thing that I wanted to mention, that, and I'm sure it was Romero. Was it Romero who played the pass to Maddison? It was, wasn't it?
I was going to mention that.
Beautiful chip.
So he's I mean, we get this guy, we get that guy from that game playing 90% of the time that way for us this season, and the two of them together at centre back is just, I don't know if I'd take any other combo in the Premiership, to be fair.
I completely agree. All right, Johnny, now that you're back from your short hiatus. How you feeling? What'd you make of the game?
Apologies, my dog was barking and was on mute, but I had to. Yeah, sorry, I had a dog. I don't know what obviously Si said when I disappeared, but I heard him picking up Cootie, which is fair. I suppose, like for me, in the ground before the game, most people were really surprised by the selection of Odobert, which is something that probably was it gave the fans a huge lift, I think, because there was a little bit of a subdued atmosphere. I don't know if it was influenced by Leicester or it was just like first game back or whatever. But I thought that the way that we started and the way that Odobert kind of personified that in some ways, the way that he was just always looking to get on the front foot and was kind of fearless. I like kind of your stereotypical young lad or younger player who doesn't know fear and just believes in themselves. And I was really, really impressed by like how much energy he had, how ambitious that he was, given that he's so young, and he kept looking to beat a player. So he was doing things that a lot of people around him were kind of referring back to Lennon, but like maybe with a little bit more promise for um, a finished product than we got from Lennon at times. But I think the way that he linked up with Madison, especially uh, on that left hand side, was like that's where most of the problems that Everton had to face were coming from our point of view. I really loved as well the reaction throughout the game that he got. It was like he's kind of a player that would really excite you. And when he went off in the second half, he got really, really brilliant innovation. So like that was brilliant to see. I suppose that the other things which were uh, which I'd touch on without going into too much detail because I don't want to like hog the conversation. But we were talking a lot about Sonny the other day, and Sonny, I guess because of the attacking lineup, there were so many players in forward positions. Like Everton were kind of overloaded, and there wasn't a lot more space for attacking players to exploit. So I think Everton found it difficult to know like how to respond to that. So the space that Sonny had, not just that, like his clearly that was exemplified by the goal when he pressed Pickford. Like, I mean, a lot of people are saying it was Pickford error, and of course it was a Pickford error, but he's not making that error if it's maybe another player chasing him down. We talked about that a little bit the other day about just the kind of aura and the reputation that goes with Son being he is a world class player, what he's achieved in the Premier League. When you've got him facing down, I mean, imagine in his shoes with a ball coming back at you like that. You know, you can imagine why he's going to be feeling the pressure as much as he's long many England caps and stuff. So I thought it was fabulous. Given our somewhat sort of melancholic discussion about Sonny the other day, to see what he putting in a man of the match performance when there were so many performances that were worthy of a man of the match kind of accolade because it was a really, really strong team. Given, of course, the caveat that Everton were absolutely trash and they've clearly got a lot of players missing. But at the same time, Spurs played really, really well. It was a great response. I think clearly a lot more ruthless and more clinical front of goal than we were against Leicester. Um, it's a pity Solanke wasn't playing because I'm sure he probably would have got his first goal uh, given the way that we played. But yeah, loads and loads of things to look forward to feel positive about afterwards. And it was one of those rare games you go to when pretty much because there was a goal early and then the second goal wasn't that much longer that you sort of weren't really worried at any point. And although we were quite slow after the second goal for sort of the 15 minutes before half time or so, it was a bit slower and more predictable and more like some of the football last year. We picked it up again for a significant part of the second half. So yeah, it was a really enjoyable game to go to, and I was really pleased with so many players. So it was excellent.
And what's interesting on Odobert, your eyes tell you the truth because he had the most attempted take-ons out of anybody in the team.
Right.
First game, young lad, big stage, and he seemed fearless. And I think when he gets his full confidence, I think he'll be even more confident on taking players on, and he's got the pace, he's got the skill. So yeah, he was another great one on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Premier League experience that he has is so invaluable, because like you can get players from even like a championship to an extent, and they'll think that they've like the atmosphere in the Premier League is different to most of the other leagues in the world, unless you're playing in like the Liga or Serie A.
Mm.
But like the if you have like a young player who doesn't have much first team experience, they can have all of the talent in the world, but it's still a question of whether or not they have the mentality to do it on the stage just as big as the Premier League. And that's why I think that buying someone like Odobert, who has the Premier League experience already at such a young age, is such like a good piece of business from us. I also want to touch on I'm going to talk about Solanke in a positive way, even though he didn't actually play. I think that most of us who watched the game and have watched Solanke's goal highlight package from last season noted a distinct similarity from Son's first goal, and the Solanke goal against Newcastle last season, where he does essentially the same thing. Keeper takes a wider touch. Solanke, he pressures the keeper, gets a easiest goal he's going to score all season, exactly like Son. And I think that it's a perfect example of what Ange looks for in a striker and why Solanke's such a good piece of business for us. Because even if it's whether it's Son playing, whether it's Solanke playing, whether it's anyone playing, Ange wants his striker to make that run and to make that pressure. And not every striker in the league is going to do that. And having someone like Solanke that's going to do that is going to be invaluable for us going forward and allow us to play Son in what I think is probably his better position out left. Other than that, I thought that obviously, like Jonny mentioned, the Everton wasn't necessarily the strongest side. They are a Premier League team, so you can't take every game. You have to take every game seriously. We saw that with the Leicester game. I think we all kind of thought on paper that game was going to be something that we would win easily, and we didn't. So while I agree that Everton wasn't the strongest, I also think that it's important to remember it is still the Premier League. Every team is good. Every game is a fight. No game is guaranteed. That being said, I think that having Kulusevski centrally was really interesting. I think that it worked really well, but I think that's because he played basically as a winger, which I think is part of why I think Johnson maybe didn't look as good in the game as he potentially could have. Because if you look at the position charts, Kulusevski and Johnson are basically on top of each other. Their circles are like this. Sorry, audio listeners. Their circles are basically look like a Venn diagram. And so that kind of impeded on the space that Johnson likes to play in, because Johnson's whole thing is knocking the ball past his man, using his pace to get to the byline and swinging across it. That's not necessarily something you can do when you have two players in the same position the whole time. And obviously, he did have space. He was integral in setting up the first goal. So I'm not going to say he had a bad game. I'm not going to slag him off or anything. But I think that Kulusevski, while I think it did go well, him playing centrally, I think that it's going to take a bit of time for him to switch from like I mentioned in the preseason, with changing from him playing wide to playing as a 9. I think it's also going to take some time between him playing wide and playing centrally as a midfielder, because when you're in game, sometimes instinct is going to take over. You're going to go to where you're used to playing, and for him, that's on that right wing, and that might encroach on someone like Johnson's space. And especially for a player like Johnson, that could be detrimental to his performance. Before we go on to talking about Brennan Johnson, I want to talk about a couple more of our standout players. We've already touched on Christian Romero. We've already touched on Son. And I would like to take this time to appreciate one of our other center backs, Mickey van de Ven. I was devastated when he went down in the first half. I was already writing the season eulogy, but then he came back up and had a fantastic rest of the game. Jonny, what did you think about his performance, and especially that goal, man? I mean, he didn't score it, but you know what I'm talking about.
It's amazing. Like I don't know. Like when he's just when we had the conversations last summer about the centre back that we'd be looking to sign, and we not. I mean, Stu would have known Mickey van der Ven from his Dutch expertise and everything, but like, well, he's shaking his head, maybe not. But like,
He plays for
what
Volendam.
he's
No one knew about him.
well, that's true. That's true. In fairness, yeah, you're right. Um, the impact he's had, I mean, it was immediate, but I think we're still seeing more and more coming from him, and like his sense of belonging. Like I love like our backlines connection and sort of I don't know, like brothership or something. Like there's a real tangible, very visible kind of cohesion between them, not just in the way that they play, but the way they relate to each other. And you see it all like sometimes you see these things on TV, and sometimes maybe you miss some of it. But like Romero has got to like be the most testosterone kind of fueled and filled, entity anywhere on the planet. Like, I mean, sure, I'm surprised there's not a David Attenborough documentary about Christian Romero, but his he's sort of perfectly complemented by Van de Ven. He's much kind of cooler temperament. Having said that, we acknowledge, the way Romero's kind of been much better disciplined and hasn't been getting in trouble with referees and things like that. But I think Van de Ven's kind of seems ice cool in terms of his confidence. The number of times when he just mopped up all of those loose balls by stealing many yards on any sort of impending Everton attack. It happened quite a few times in the second half, and it was like you're just there in the crowd. You're just like, I'm not worried because Mickey Van de Ven's there. It's like it's unbelievable, and obviously the goal was absolutely ridiculous. It was one of those ones you think, okay, he's still got the ball, he's still got the ball, he's still got the ball, he's still got the ball. Like the length that he carried that, and the defenders were the Everton guys weren't getting anywhere near him. Like, I mean, they might have been just about sort of shadowing him, but there was no one getting anywhere close to a tackle. And then for him to be able to weight the ball perfectly to Sonny as he did, but at the exact point that he would have wanted it. I mean, I know Sonny maybe he didn't hit in first time or anything. It was a difficult finish for Sonny to execute still, which definitely needs to be acknowledged. But it's just again shows he's not your typical centre half, is he? Like that when you've got the speed to carry on that and the ambition and the confidence, and then to be able to play that pass, it's like ridiculous. It's just completely ridiculous. It's like when you're playing a computer game and you're just like pressing the speed button, and like when you're doing it, this never happens in real life, but actually it did with Van de Ven. And it's like unbelievable. We're so lucky to we have him and Romero and the other two. Like what a great back line we have. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
I
I
love and the
completely.
last one, like the whole like Paro and Romero. They're so like they're like one of them does a good tackle and it's like there's none of the fist bumps or high fives. It's like chests colliding. And like, yeah, my man, yeah. It's like, okay, but I love that. I love that. It's like it gets everybody going. The fans are, it's fantastic. But yeah, I love Mickey Van de Ven. I think everyone in the world loves Mickey Van de Ven. Well, we
Such a
all do
handsome
anyway.
bloke.
He's a good
Yeah,
looking
he
guy as
is.
well. Yeah, yeah.
All right, I'm going to jump in here. I just want to go back to Odobert. I thought it was quite interesting how everyone was slagging off the club because we were buying yet another youngster. And Ange said before the game how he does not buying players who are not ready to play now. And I thought that was highlighted again by how well he played and what DJ was saying that, he's bought someone with experience. And you saw that, okay, he hasn't had the preseason with us, which is why I think he faded a bit in the second half. But I think, and again, what DJ said, I think Johnson was instrumental in the first goal because it was his attack into the area that created havoc, which then gave Kulu the opportunity to just pass it along to Bissouma to smack it in. But I think once Solanke's back, it'd probably be interesting to see him up front, Son on the left, and Odobert on the right, and we'll have a really fast, fluid, front three who are willing to be able to take players on as well. And it shows, I think, also with the combination with Kulu, that people who are criticizing Ange for not having a plan B, that he has changed it up against teams that set up the low block. So we have gone with a more attacking kind of 8. So
Yeah.
they gave someone who can kind of interchange with Madison, who then can also, as DJ again rightly pointed out, can go out to the wing and is comfortable out there. So it just shows that Ange is learning. Ange is adapting his tactics. Ange is now having a squad that is allowing him to come up with different plans and different tactics depending on who we're playing, which I think is amazing. But one last thing I want to say about the game was, this might surprise you, but comparing the Leicester game where everyone was, it's a shit, it's the end of the world, we've never played so badly, blah, blah, blah. We had a total of 112 attacks against Leicester, as opposed to 109 against Everton. We had 81 dangerous attacks against Leicester versus 67 against Everton. We had the same amount of shots on target against Leicester as we did against Everton. We had 12 corners against Everton as opposed to 13 against Leicester. So the Leicester game, everyone, obviously that one moment of Romero switching off because he hadn't played for 3 weeks, really, I think, blinded a lot of people to how good a performance it was in the first half.
Yeah.
And it was again after the Bentancur injury once, we got things back on track. And, it just shows fine margins. And it really isn't the end of the world. And again, Everton are poor. They were missing half their squad. But, I think we really need as a fan base to kind of drill down a little bit more and stop being so kind of jerky and, depending on the result, overreacting to every crazy little thing that happens.
Yeah, I think the other another thing that stood out to me when you look at some of the defensive actions was what a difference you've got when you've got a ball-winning 6 in there, and what that does allow your defence to do and not do. So if you look at the stats, Van der Ven didn't make a tackle because he's not that sort of defender. That's not what he's there for. So it allows him to be able to cover those deeper runs. So if you think about Everton tried to play it through the middle in the tight area. Bissouma was there, 100% tackle rate. Yeah, try to play it a little bit longer through the lines. Yeah, Romero's there, 6 for 6, 100% tackle wins. Yeah, you try and play it over the top. You've got Van der Ven puts on the burners, and Calvert-Lewin couldn't get anywhere near him.
Exactly.
So as poor as Everton were, and they weren't great, absolutely. To DJ's point, they're a Premier League side with Premier League players, and they didn't know what to do because they had nowhere to go. Because every avenue that they tried, the stoppers were put up. So it really is amazing when you've got a really solid 6 in there. And Bissouma for Saturday was, if you could get him playing like that and get those incremental improvements, there's your 6.
But also, I think people forget, because we had so many injuries and it was such a crazy season, but the amount of goals we conceded when we had our favorite or best back 4 was about less than, I think, a goal a game or something like a goal a game last season. Then we conceded a lot more because we lost Destiny, we lost Romero for a while, we lost Mickey for a while, etc. But again, we've got that back 4 in again. So, people who are always like, we're weak at the defense, etc., etc. We weren't. We just didn't have the main players.
Yeah,
and now
they're
back again.
The system
exactly.
around the defence is you defend as a unit, right? And let's not forget, we had the Africa Cup of Nations last year, didn't we, as well? Bissouma contracted malaria whilst he was away.
Yep.
We had all of this stuff going on that even if we have half that luck this year, we're going to have a full team most weeks, right? So I think that there was a lot of mitigation for last year, and we finished 2 points off 4.
Yeah.
You're telling me that you're going to concede more goals when you have 2 fullbacks playing centre back? This is the first time I'm hearing of this.
Come on, Deej, get with it.
As Milan have seen with Emerson Royale's first game.
I was going to
That's
say...
square fast. That's square fast, man. Pass without looking.
Man.
Give him the eyes. Give him the eyes, Emerson.
I miss him so much. But yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Bissouma, because obviously he's been a hot topic of conversation for the past 2 weeks, essentially, especially since everything that's come out with him and the comments that Ange made. And I'm really happy that he looks like he's... I mean, obviously it's been 2 weeks. We can't make a distinction off of 2 weeks, but I am willing to give him the most benefit of the doubt possible, essentially. I think that he is going to... I think that he played incredibly well. I think that, like I mentioned before in other conversations about the game, he knows how to play that 6 role, I think, better than Bentancur does. And I'm not saying that as a slight to Bentancur. I'm just like looking at Bissouma's positions throughout the game. He was always in a place where if a counterattack broke out, he was there to potentially wipe that away immediately. If he would, or like Sai said, or the ball goes towards Romero and Romero is there because Romero's awesome, or they hit it over the top, and we have the fastest man in the Premier League to laugh at you basically. So, and then if you compare that to when we conceded against Leicester, the counterattack started because Bentancur was in the 6-yard box essentially, and he took a shot. It was a good position to be in if you're an 8, but the problem is you can't just look at your potential attacking output there. You have to also be wary of the drawback of the potential defensive liability if you're not there. And I think that's something that Bissouma understands really, really well. Because even for his goal, he was a ways away and striker from outside the 18. So I think that having that kind of understanding of the positioning that you need is something that's super important. And I hope that he can continue to keep the attitude required to maintain a position in the team. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this question on to you, Sai. Where do you think that he is in terms of building a bridge back to the squad? Do you think that what else do you think he needs to do? Does this just do more of this?
Yeah, I think that obviously there's stuff that we don't see in the background. I think he's probably got some good foundations down and he's starting to build on the pilings. I think he's still got a little bit of work there. What Ange alluded to in the previous press conferences was that in general, he needs to be a bit more adult and a bit more professional in his approach. And when he's got stuff off the pitch, he feels that it filters onto the pitch. So let's hope he takes someone from that. I think a milestone in his bridge building project was when he went up and hugged the gaffer after his goal. I mean, that says to me, that says I'm listening. I appreciate your feedback, because he could have been an arse about it and he could have run to the middle and sort of like just give it to the fans, but he went straight up to the boss. He went in front of the South, give it to the fans, sort of bowed and sort of like prayed a bit, and then he went straight to Ange and gave him a massive hug. So that shows me that he's got a level of respect there for the boss. I think the boss, the overall project manager, I think he understands how to get the workers working, and I think he's doing the right thing there with Biss, and he's got to keep it up, but I also think that Ange won't suffer a fall gladly on this sort of thing, and if he keeps having these infractions into his discipline, then you'll start to see some more strict actions from Ange, I think. But I thought that action spoke a million words.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that the celebration, like you said, I like the apologizing to the South Stand and then going over and hugging the boss. I think it gives you a pretty clear insight into where he is in terms of how he is like relating to the rest of the squad and the manager specifically. I think it's a positive one, honestly. I think that, obviously we have 2 players, I guess, in the squad right now that have had potential questions about their work ethic and their commitment to the team in both Spence and Bissouma, and it looks like they're both heading in the right direction. And as long as they continue to do that, I am more than happy to have them back into the squad. I think that obviously they're both very talented players and they both make our team better, especially Spence because he's homegrown. Speaking of being homegrown, I think that it's now is a good time as any to move on to talking about the rest of the transfer window. We've had a bunch of, I think we all pretty much agree that we've made some pretty good signings, and obviously our outgoings have been incredible, considering what we've had to deal with for the last couple of windows and just the amount of people that we can move out. Maybe we haven't gotten the fees that we wanted, but as we've alluded to before, getting rid of the players means you get rid of the wages, and the wages are massive as well. So I think we should go ahead and start with Solomon leaving. Does anyone have any strong opinions on that? Is it just something that needed to happen?
I think clearly he had an opportunity last year. Injury meant he didn't have one really, an opportunity to show his wares. And in the meantime, we've stocked up. Mikey Moore's come through. We've brought in Yang. We've got Johnson, whether we like it or not. But the Gaffers spent 48 million on him. He's not going to give up on him anytime soon. We're got too many players on the wing, so I think it's a case of let him go out on loan. Hopefully, he plays well and earns a move somewhere else, and we'll be happy because it's pure profit. We'll probably get sued by Shakhtar for some more millions, and we'll take it from there. So I think it's a good move.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's really much more to say on the matter.
From what I've saw, that is the 17th player that has either left or gone on loan since the end of last season.
Yeah.
It's our rebuild has come along fantastically, and I'm very glad to see it start to get rolling, despite potentially a slower start than I would have wanted in terms of outgoings last season. I think that this season has really stepped it up in terms of the amount of players that we've moved on. So now I want to go ahead and talk about what the rest of our window looks like. There's obviously The Athletic released something today that essentially said that Tottenham aren't super invested in making any further moves in the transfer window. But then there are also reports from random people, I guess, that we might be looking for a backup center back, left-sided center back, which I would believe because I think that we saw last season when Van de Ven was out that Dragusin can deputize there, but he's definitely more comfortable on the right. So I think that that's something that we definitely could look for in this window. Stu, I know you were looking at the squad registration rules for the Europa League in particular.
Yeah, so obviously the Europa League's much more complicated compared to the Premier League. Because the Premier League, you just have to have 8 homegrown, whether they're club grown or homegrown doesn't make any difference. And under 21s are under 21s. Whereas in the Europa League, to be an under 21, you've had to have played for the club for 2 years. So Gray, although he's under 21 in English, he counts as an adult basically. Bergval, again, under 21, but counts as an adult. So those players in the Premier League don't count to the Europa League. So even without Solomon and not counting Lo Celso and Reguilon, we have 24 players that count as squad players. But of those 24, only 2 are club grown. So again, we've got to take off 2 from the squad total of 25, which allows only 23. So already we have basically too many players. So one's going to lose out anyway of the ones we have, which means if we bring anyone in, that means 2 people are going to miss out on getting a Europa League squad, and that's obviously not including Mikey Moore, Lancashire, etc. But I think it does make it a lot more complicated. Everyone has this idea of one in, one out, because we've got to move on Lo Celso, Reguilon, and potentially another person to create some space. So it isn't easy to do when it comes to the squad numbers, unless, as HG was claiming the other day, and I think he might be right, if we bring in someone who can cover left centre back and left back, someone like Werner could miss out because we'll still have cover with Odobert, Johnson, Kulu, Son, Mikey Moore, etc.
Yeah, I think that just to make a quick little, I guess, clarification there, the homegrown part is fine. Like Archie Gray is, I believe, homegrown because he's within the rules. He's just not club trained yet, obviously. And he also doesn't count as the under 21 because he hasn't been with the club for 2 years. The under 21 thing is just for the list B, which isn't part of the main squad. So like Mikey Moore wouldn't have to be listed in the squad of 25 that you have to submit to be like as like your list A, I guess, as part of I think they call it list B. But someone like Archie Gray and someone like Lucas Bergval would have to, because while they are under the age of 21, they haven't been at the club for 2 years. So that's where that I guess comes into.
So basically, of that squad of 24, we have 7 are homegrown, 2 are club grown, and then the rest are foreigners.
Yeah, and that's why I guess that's why someone like Skip costs so much money, right? Because it's not just that the player is important to the other club; it's that Skip is important to us for registration rules for the Europa League, because homegrown club trained players are not necessarily easy to come by. We only have 2 of them. One of them, I believe, is a backup goalkeeper. So it's not easy to get those players. So that's why the fee for someone like Skip, I think, makes sense, even though it may have seemed high at first view.
The one thing I will chip in was one of the homegrown players that could be left out of the Europa League would be Forster, because we have enough homegrown. But then it's kind of risky because then we've only got Whiteman and Alston, and I'm not sure how confident we'd want to be as those being our only goalkeepers.
Austin was getting a look in pre-season, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Maybe with a view to that, precisely that.
Maybe.
It'll definitely be interesting to see what we do with our Europa League registration if we sign anybody else.
When's the deadline? When's the deadline, Stu? Do you know? When do we have to register by?
After obviously the window closes, so that's not a problem.
Yeah, I think the original deadline is a couple days after the window,
Right,
and I think List B can be updated more, like, generally,
Okay.
but that's not a problem because List B is kind of just every youth player you have,
Exactly.
essentially, in case of catastrophe.
Anyone from the age of 16 to under 21 will be on that list.
As long as you've been with the club for 2 years.
Yep, 2 years.
So yeah, with that being said, do you guys think that left-sided center back is something that should be our main focus for the rest of the window if we are to sign someone else, or do you think that there's another position that we should reach out and we should look at? I know that we've talked in the past about potentially signing a 6 to either be a Bissouma understudy or try to even push Bissouma in competition for places, but as has been talked about a lot, I think that Archie Gray has kind of come in and made that backup 6 position his own, which is really exciting and means that I don't think we necessarily need to spend money there. I don't know if you guys agree with me or not. So do you think that backup center back, that's left-sided specifically, and maybe can cover left back if necessary, do you think that's the kind of player that we need to look at if we're buying someone, or is there somewhere else you'd rather prioritize?
I'm probably the least qualified to look at an intelligent answer, but I'm going to hop in anyway.
Have a go.
I'm going to set the bar. Expectations are low now. I mean, what I think would just without the expertise, you guys are much more on top of all these rules and these nuances and everything. If I'm being completely honest about it, I'm listening here, I'm trying to understand. A lot of it doesn't make sense, but that's rules for you, I guess. What I think overall is if you're going to be just looking at the broader picture, as you said there, Deech, with the turnover there's been, the amount of players that have left in a very, very short period of time, we're talking just over a year's time, that it's a remarkable turnaround, and how we need to be realistic, and if we're going to be generally going to be balanced about the whole thing, to look at what Andrew's achieved and what the personnel who Langa and everyone else in his team have managed to do in both incomings and outgoings is pretty incredible, I think. And it's not just the numbers, it's the players that are now nailed on that we're just used to take for granted, and our top performers, I know Porro came in before, but certainly a Doggy and Van de Ven in the back line. And now we're talking about the additions this summer with the likes of Bergwell. I know he came in February, but he's appearing now, and Gray, and now Odobert, and so on. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, if we were going to look at the squad and think, okay, where is the greatest need? Then I guess the left centre back position is probably the most obvious. We had quite a big chat about 6 last week, and then Biss puts in a performance like he did, and we're slightly less concerned about it because that's the nature of football supporters. You kind of, oh, it's all right now, kind of thing. Which we all know that if you get a few bad injuries, then things can look very different. As your freak out whenever VDV went down the other day, Deej, I think we all felt the same. So I think that if we were just going to be objective about the whole overall picture, I honestly think that if you're going to be fair, we've probably done a lot better than we probably would have expected. And one of the things that I think, and I'm not really in, I'm not on X, and I try it, and I kind of dip in and out of WhatsApp groups and things like that. Like I just think all of the noise around like Levy, and I know it's a subject that we kind of don't get bogged down in terms of like views on ownership, but obviously Levy has been given a very hard time with his interference in the whole transfer market, and it's not something that I'm very aware has been part of the narrative over the last while. And it does seem, anecdotally, that that's something that, as we hoped, would be the case just over a year ago when things were reformed, that uh, actually Daniel's going to sort of run the business and obviously keep a very close eye on the football side of things, but he's not going to be telling people what to do and sort of scuppering deals the way it's certainly been projected he has done by looking for an extra, million here or whatever. And I think there's probably more than something in that, over the years, the things that could have been achieved if he hadn't been the way he is. So I just think that's another thing that's probably worth just like taking on board if we're going to be fair about it. I've got nothing to gain from like bigging up Uncle Daniel. I mean, at the end of the day, other than the fact that
You haven't gotten your direct deposit yet?
Do you know what I mean? Though I think we need to give credit. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think we need to acknowledge the fact that that's something that genuinely seems to have really improved. And the fact, I think the outgoings maybe is the bigger indication of that than anything, that we've managed to probably negotiate departures that wouldn't have been necessarily go over the line before if he was more directly involved. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What do you think about, I guess, both our new transfer policy as a whole, with both the letting players go that we need to let go for potentially lower fees than we could potentially get for them, and also I wanted to mention our essentially complete secrecy to the press when it comes to signing our players, because outside of a couple of rumblings, there wasn't really anything super concrete about Solanke before his transfer was essentially finished. And then Odobert, I think the whole saga happened in like 3 hours. So that's just, well, obviously happened in 3 hours on social media. So I guess I'll pass that off to Sai. What do you think about our new transfer policy? And also, I guess, if you have any thoughts about the original question.
Yes. So I think, going for players of a certain age with a high ceiling that are somewhat ready to come into the first team and make some improvements on what we've got or what we had, I think it's sound. And I think if you look at any of the top sides in Europe, they have a strong youth policy, whether it's homegrown or whether it's getting them from other places. They all have a very strong youth policy, and they supplement that with some big purchases. And what have we done this season? Well, you've got Gray, Odobert supplemented with Solanke, and so that's straight away. I think that's about 130 million quid's worth of signings just across the three. So it's not like the purse strings are pulled shut. And I think Ange will be a case of they need to be the right people. We're not just going to get the bums on seats, because that just doesn't work. So I think that's I like it. It builds for the future along with our academy players coming through. I think we've got such and I'll let Stu talk to it in a minute about the number of sort of under 21 or under that we've got. We've almost got a full team there. So that's exciting. And I think even if you get a 50% hit rate out of that age group, then you're going to have a great side. So I like that. And in terms of the original question about where we should strengthen, it's a difficult one, because I don't see in any of Ange's language that he's talking about the defence. I just don't, because when he talks about centre back, he's mentioned Davis a couple of times as cover for centre back, and he's mentioned Davis as cover for left back. And then at the weekend, he's brought on Spence at left back when Adogi's gone off with some tight hamstring. So I'm not sure that from the language that I'm hearing, I still hear him say that we're not clinical enough up front. And I think that there's still something that he's looking for there. Maybe someone to push Maddison. Maybe if Lo Celso's going to be out the door. And we talk about this, is it a 6, 8 or 10? Well, I think that actually we played with 2 8s at the weekend, right? With Maddison being a left-sided 8 and Kulu being a right-sided winger, stroke 8, inverted winger coming into that 8. So I think that maybe something really creative, and I don't know if Bentancur could be that person. If we've got Gray and Bissouma as cover for the 6, Bentancur could be a double pivot 6 or a double pivot 8 if we needed to. So I'm not sure where he would look. He may take in another attack-minded player if the opportunity arises. But yeah, so I think that's where I stand on that.
I think the only weak area we have right now is left back, because Spence can do a job, but I don't think that is his comfortable role. And I think, as you said quite rightly, Si, I think Ange definitely sees Davis as a left centre back, which means we don't really have anyone who can play the inverted left back role. So I think that's the only one that perhaps we could look at improving. Obviously, if we can find someone who can also cover left centre back and is quick, even the better, because that's the other thing that we've been talking about, what impact Van der Ven brings to the team, to speed, which scares everybody off. If he's out again injured, we lose that high line that he's able to give us because of the protection he gives us. So I think that is potentially something that we could look at. But yeah, I don't know. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we don't bring anyone in. I just think we've had a huge overhaul. As I said, 17 players left this summer. We've got a full squad. I just don't understand to this day why we were so quick in bringing Warner back. I don't know if you guys think the same thing, but I just found that baffling.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I guess he was kind of like, my read on it is it was just kind of an insurance move to, if everything else fell through, that we had something to lean back on. Because I don't know how much of his wages we're covering. It might be 100%. I don't know. But even so, we have no obligation to buy him. So he's not like a long-term financial commitment. And he's not someone that we need to give minutes to make sure that we can keep up his value. If we have players that are better than him, he can just sit on the bench and it's fine. It's no sweat off, no skin off our backs. Yeah. So that's kind of the read that I got on that move.
The other thing, sorry, Deej, just want to say that another reason I don't think we might bring in players is because we have got all these young players in. So part of the strategy, which kind of gave Poch, it's the same kind of blueprint. When Poch joined, he was there the one season. At the end of that, we got rid of all the old guard, and then we brought in all the kids, and that saw us have our best run for 60 years in the league, and got us to our first European Cup final. And we seem to be doing the same thing now. And if we bring in all these players, what are we going to do with the likes of Destiny, Bergvall, Gray, Mikey Moore? We've got to show them that they've got a roadmap to playing time, especially Mikey Moore, because otherwise, he is a generational talent. And we do not want him leaving, because we could only give him, DJ, you'll correct me, a 3-year contract was the max deal, you gives. Yeah. So, that's going to be over before we know it. And if he doesn't see that he's getting game time, we're bringing in people ahead of him, he'll leave. And there's no shortage of people wanting him. So I think this is also kind of part of the strategy that we're looking at.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. From my read of how the window is gone, or at least how I would guess it would be how I would do it if I were Johan Lange, which I'm not. But I think that we're probably focusing on getting rid of Reguilon and Lo Celso, because it seems like they don't have a roadmap, a pathway back into the squad from what it seems from preseason and on quotes and whatnot. So I think that those are probably going to be our focus. I think that if we do bring in a player, it will be someone to either cover left center back or left back, maybe both. But I do think that the profile will be someone who is younger, to kind of fit the kind of what we're trying to do with this squad, to bring in someone who can develop instead of someone who's going to start right away. Obviously, it's almost impossible to buy someone who can displace either Destiny or Van de Ven. So I think that bringing in someone young, like Stu just mentioned Hato, I think that someone of that profile could be what we look for, but I also genuinely wouldn't be surprised, nor would I be upset if we didn't bring in anybody. I think we've had a fantastic window, both in terms of incomings and outgoings, and I think it set us up for a really exciting season ahead, and also exciting seasons beyond this one. So yeah, I think that will do it for the episode. So we'll end, as always, with up Spurs.
County Spurs.
Come on,
Come on,
Spurs.
you guys can do better than that.
I was a mute. Spurs.
I would explain it. All right, we will see you guys on Thursday, I believe, for a Newcastle preview podcast. And yeah, have a
Easy.
fantastic week, y'all.